Hello, my name is Sam Loni, and it's an absolute pleasure being here in the plenary session at the North American Environmental Education Association conference. It is such an important time for this conference to be held, albeit in very difficult times, but nevertheless very important. And a huge thank you to the North American Environmental Education Association for recognizing me and giving me the opportunity to be part of this incredible conference, and also the incredible network of 30 under 30 environmental education leaders. Thank you very much for that opportunity. As mentioned, my name is Sam Loni, and I'm the Director of Global Schools. Global Schools is a flagship program of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, the SDSN. The SDSN is a research and policy organization operating under the auspices of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. The mission of Global Schools is quite simple. It is to support schools and educators in shaping a sustainable world. But this comes in the context of profound global challenges in the 21st century. Those challenges range from extreme poverty, where we have more than 1 billion people who live on less than $2 a day, in the context where many people are being subjected to conflict and violence, and many are unable to access basic justices, where we have wealth inequality to the point where approximately 50 individuals of the richest individuals have as much wealth as the bottom 3.75 billion, or the bottom poorest half of the planet. And of course, the impacts of climate change and environmental change, whether that's plastics in the ocean, where it is estimated that by 2050 there will be more plastics in the oceans than fish, or the fact that some cities in parts of the world are unlivable because of the pollution, or the fact that climate change is going to cause serious distress and challenges for us in our future. And this also comes in the big context of biodiversity loss, where the UN has warned recently that we could lose up to 1 million different species of plants and animals if serious and urgent action is not taken. And of course, COVID-19, which has caused additional stress and shocks to these existing problems and exacerbated it. And it shows us that we have a future ahead of us, a new one, a future where it is unpredictable, it's full of challenges, and very complex. So my question is, are we doing enough to prepare the more than 1 billion young people? These are students in primary and secondary schools, for this future. Are we preparing them? Are we equipping them with the skills, with the knowledge and values necessary for them to be able to respond to these big challenges, but also to be able to shape a more sustainable world and sustainable communities, more prosperous communities? In fact, many different estimates, and these vary because of unavailability of data, but many different estimates say that we're not educating young people about this. In fact, the majority of students that are currently in primary and secondary school, of these 1 billion students, don't have access to good quality education on sustainability issues and some of these big global challenges. And you might ask yourself, why? There are many reasons, but one of the reasons that has regularly been cited is that education systems around the world have not been able to focus on the issue of sustainable development because they're focusing on the very basic issues of education. And these education systems, particularly in the developing world, are under-resourced, stretched, and dealing with the most basic issues such as literacy and numeracy, and achieving those very basic metrics. And this is problematic because it does not allow them to put enough resources and attention to the wider social issues. And in fact, there is report after report by the United Nations, UNESCO, the GEM report, which shows that there is this serious gap in learning. And this is what a lot of different educational systems are dealing with. And this is where I think the big gap is, because the advocates of sustainable development, with me being one of them, I think we haven't been able to articulate the true importance of sustainable development, not just for betterment of society, but for betterment of education systems. And the way we have tried to promote and help install better systems of education in terms of sustainable development, I think has been a shortfall. There have been many issues, and that's because we have not usually adopted a comprehensive approach to this. For sustainable development based on the findings in the literature, for sustainable development education to be effective, it needs to be across the various learning domains: socio-emotional, behavioral, and cognitive. It needs to be multifaceted. It needs to focus on the environment, on the economy, and on society, and of course on the overarching issue of governance. It needs to be taught through innovative pedagogies. It needs to be localized to the language, to the political context. It needs to be synchronized to the existing curriculum. It needs to have cultural relevance, and it needs to be compulsory, and it needs to be expanded across the entire K-12 journey. And unfortunately, this kind of a comprehensive system is very hard to implement in different education systems around the world. Many are making the effort, but more needs to be done. So Global Schools program is about trying to fill as many of these gaps as we can, and is within our capacity. So it comes with the recognition that the world needs many more of its citizens, especially the next generation, to have the skills, attitudes, and values necessary to tackle the greatest challenges of our time, but also to shape a more sustainable future. And there are different approaches to this, but these are set as some of the competencies that are critical for young people to be able to do this, for them to have a better understanding of the world, to respond to it and shape a more sustainable world. But the question is, how do you get this into different school systems? And for us at Global Schools, we have a methodology, which is research, advocacy, and monitoring. The whole idea of this is through research to develop the best knowledge and the best tools, through advocacy to promote them at scale and meaningfully, and for monitoring to see what the results are, to improve this process continuously. The key areas of our work are focusing global frameworks and tools, on global advocacy and outreach, local research and application, and then local advocacy and outreach. As an example, we have curated lesson plans which are completely free, available for all grades and subjects. They're easy to access. They're made by leading experts from Harvard University, available in multiple languages and easily adaptable to local curriculum. In fact, teachers with a few clicks can access these lesson plans which cover the entire spectrum of sustainable development. So this is an example of one of our work. The other example in terms of research policy papers and our global creation of tools and resources are the different papers that will, and policy and research papers that we'll be producing, which help fill some of the gaps in our current work. And these include the curriculum localization toolkit for the developing countries and developing education systems, the impact of ESD on education outcomes, and a new area that we're looking to explore, which is to identify unsustainable curriculum for a more sustainable future. Examples of global advocacy is a campaign we ran with the Generation IB, which was run in coordination with the International Baccalaureate. It ran for 8 weeks. There were 637 student groups involved across 163 countries. And of course, we had many, many different projects and student activities that came as a result of this. Last year, we went and recruited 500 young leaders from communities around the world. These are in fact from 80 different countries. We trained them online, and we gave them the knowledge, the tools and resources to make them advocates of education and sustainability. In that process, they reached out to 7,000 schools in 80 different countries and presented at many of those schools and made the case to teachers and principals about the importance of education for sustainable development. And in fact, through this process, they managed to convince more than 1,000 schools around the world to commit to changing their curriculum and school activities to reflect the principles and the objectives of sustainable development. And in fact, these 1,000 schools represent more than 45,000 teachers and 850,000 students. So the impact of such a network can be quite profound and significant. In addition, we're conducting research in 3 different countries, Morocco, Turkey, and Ghana, with our partners. And the objective of this research is essentially to audit the curriculum within these countries, find out how the sustainable development education can be embedded, and to create content and lesson plans which can then be evaluated. And through this process, we hope to learn and then create a toolkit which we can use to help other countries and education systems essentially transition to ESD, environmental education, and global citizenship. Finally, we are in the process of setting up a very high-level task force, which will be called Mission 4.7, referring to SDG 4.7, Sustainable Development Goals. And the purpose of this international task force is to really promote and mobilize leaders, this is research leaders, policy leaders, and different organizations behind environmental and sustainable development education. The idea is to really promote a global campaign which can support different countries and different organizations and schools around the world to accelerate their efforts on sustainable development. In brief, this is an overview of global schools, and it comes with the understanding that we're the first generation that can end poverty and the last generation that can end climate change. And to do that, we need our young leaders to have the knowledge, the skills, and the attitudes and capabilities that are needed to be able to navigate this complex, unpredictable, and challenging future. At Global Schools, it is our objective to support them to do that. And we look forward to working with you and the North American Environmental Education Association and in the incredible cohort of 30 under 30 young leaders. Thank you very much for this opportunity.